All right, so we got two questions in the Facebook group. Hannah asked using vibrato to end a note rather than a decrescendo. So we're going to talk about that. And then Carl asked about how to do a decrescendo and vibrato at the same time. And I think actually Hannah's question sort of answers Carl's question. So I'm going to talk about both and explain why. Okay, so again, if you're here, say hello. So, using vibrato to end a note. So, first of all, ending a note quietly is, I think, more where this kind of falls. If you're going to end a note that's like triple forte, I mean, you could do vibrato at the end, but since it's so aggressive, like, I would say it's like less common, but it does give a little bit of like a fun spin at the end of a note. For example, like, I'll do a quiet one first. So this is what Hannah was talking about, I think. So where you end the note and there's vibrato at the end of it. So here is a loud version of that. Where it kind of just goes off into nothing. So yeah, I guess you can use it for if you're getting louder on a note or getting quieter. So when it comes to actually ending the note, I would pay attention to the vibrations. So in this example I was just doing, like, for the loud note, I was doing kind of like bum 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 bum. You're going to want to end the note kind of at the top of each kind of wave. So if your waves are bum 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 bum, just release the note at the top of the vibrato, wavelength or whatever. Almost like it's beated, like it's rhythmic. So, and I think, this is actually a little bit of something that is easy for me to notice. I've been studying flute for like 20 years or whatever. I notice sometimes the rhythm of the vibrato people are doing. So maybe they're doing vibrato like this. I'm hearing bum 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 like that. Or maybe they're doing vibrato like this. I'm hearing bum 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 like that. If you're ending a note, especially a loud note, let's do a loud note. I would increase, so if you're doing crescendo, I would increase the, what do you call it, oscillations or something of the vibrato. So it's like do 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 do, kind of like that, and then end at, end rhythmically, just kind of release your air. So that was exactly it. Let me do it one more time. So it was very rhythmic, my vibrato. I did bum, 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 and I ended. And let's say maybe that was 3 beats. It was like a dotted half note on my last beat. I could do that. Yeah. All right. So if it's quiet, I would do the same exact thing where you end at the top of the vibrato thing. So and I wouldn't, now that I'm thinking of it, I wouldn't decrease the number. It depends on what kind of effect you're doing. This is where, a lot of flute players in this group are asking questions about tone colors. If you know how to do vibrato, there's so much you could do with vibrato by just choosing to vibrate eighth notes, to vibrate triplets, or 16th notes. That changes the color. So like this sound, has one type of color, and I'm just doing bum 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 like that. But then this note has a much darker color, and I'm vibrating 16th notes. I'm vibrating bum 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 bum. So changing your vibrato can change the tone color. Wouldn't you know? Yeah. So I just see some people joined. Hello. If you can comment on, leave a comment, say hello. That'd be awesome. I'd love to know who's here. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to write a comment. I just talked about ending a note with vibrato, whether you're playing a loud note or a soft note. And it was, yeah. So if you missed that, feel free to rewatch it. Because I want to make sure that I get to the rest of the questions. So this is Carl's question now, where it's tapering off a note and doing vibrato at the same time. So yes, that's hard. And the piece that you posted, the entr'acte, that high G at the end, actually I pulled it up in the other Facebook page, so I'm going to make sure, yeah. The high G, it's literally, oh, it's not a G, it's a B flat. Oh, that's hard to see. It's very small. Okay, it's a high B flat. So this is the end. So, and then the B flat is held for like 9 beats, and it starts as a pianissimo, and then it says the smorzando, so kind of just continue playing quiet. Well, first of all, that's a very long note, and it's very high. So don't beat yourself up if you're having trouble making it sound absolutely perfect. So for that high B in particular, I would have this type of approach. Let me go back to the screen that I was on just in case anyone left any comments. Hi Kathleen, good to have you here. So if you want to reference what we're talking about the Bizet entr'acte, and it's on my post from yesterday when I was like, anyone have any questions about vibrato? And somebody posted a picture of the Carmen. So we're talking about the last note, which is a high B flat, playing that pianissimo and also tapering it in addition and playing it with vibrato. This is the approach I would have. I would aim to play that high B flat without vibrato for as long as possible. And then when I'm starting to run out of air or get to the end of the note, I would add in a little sprinkle. And here's why. Most likely, and if you're playing this in your own flute practice, like, you might not be playing with other people, but this is an orchestra piece. You're playing it with, other strings and woodwinds and brass, but I don't know who plays it in the last measure exactly. But when a flute has a high note like this in an orchestral piece, it's very much just a color. And playing a high note, the higher the frequency you get, the smaller the wavelength, it's harder to play perfectly in tune. This is why piccolo is so hard to play in tune. Anyone have trouble playing piccolo in tune? Well, this is just like a regular old B flat on a piccolo. And the piccolo goes even higher than that. So I would play this without vibrato for as long as possible and then just add in a sprinkle. So sorry. So I would just play it nice and, I was just going to say flat, like a plane, but then I was like, ooh, not like flat, like pitch. So play it just without vibrato and keep it very gentle. You can even keep your air going. Think about the beats that are going under you, just so that you have direction with it. And then at the very end, just add in a little sprinkle of vibrato. Now, Carl, as far as doing a decrescendo on that high B flat, no, don't do that. It's just starts quiet and ends the same amount of quiet. I don't think it's reasonable at all. Like anytime I've ever played this in an orchestra, in a solo piece, in a chamber music piece, if I have a high note like that that's held for 9 beats, I might, especially if it's high, just try to play it in tune. Try to make sure that you're not playing louder than the people who have the important part, because, If you have a long note like that, it is not important. There are people with moving notes, with eighth notes or quarter notes underneath you, even half notes. Their parts are moving, they're melodic, and they're more important. This is an accompanimental note because it's just a whole note tied to another whole note. So don't play with vibrato. Try to get out of the way. Just decorate. Be that high little, like, bright color that's kind of on top, just like the little, like, sugar sprinkles on top of a sugar cookie or whatever. And then just do a little bit of vibrato at the end. Don't worry about doing a decrescendo. You can do a decrescendo in the measure before where you go, but don't get too quiet, because listen to the difference in volume between this B flat and this B flat. The high note's going to be easier to hear no matter what. No matter how good you are at playing quiet, that's going to be much louder. So think about that, and then use that as kind of a reference point for how much should I decrescendo. So if I decrescendo too much, first of all, it might be kind of hard to hear the edge, and then that note's just going to pop out. So don't decrescendo too much. Decrescendo relative to how quietly you can play that high B flat. So if you can play the high B flat, maybe up there. There's your B flat before. Maybe that's your B flat before the decrescendo. So add it up like that. And yeah, so honestly, because we haven't talked a whole lot about music interpretation, and the whole second month of our Woodman Academy is about interpretation, here's an example of interpreting music. How do I play it with a decrescendo, with vibrato? How do I play it in tune? How do I make it all work? You don't have to do everything that's written there. And things like what I'm saying here, where like recognizing when you have the accompanimental part versus the melodic part, is huge in determining what volume you play at. And it's stuff that I had to learn in a conservatory through playing with other musicians. It's not something I learned on my own, because when you're playing on your own, you don't have to take other people into account, except maybe like your upstairs neighbors when you're like playing high B flats like all night. You have to take them into account. But when you're playing with somebody else, like, and or if you're practicing an ensemble piece that you are going to play with somebody else later, like maybe you're practicing your flute choir piece at home and you're about to go play an ensemble, there are ways and strategies to determine how you should phrase something, what dynamic you should play with, which notes you should use vibrato on, so that when you go and you play it in flute choir, you have it all prepared appropriately. And what is on the page isn't necessarily what you must do, because not every composer is a professional flute player, and even if they are, they're writing so many parts, and some markings are meant to be like the ensemble dynamic or the ensemble effect, and it might change per instrument. Same thing with clarinet and saxophone. There are little like adjustments we can make in there. That it's just hard to learn without really discussing and analyzing it. So that's the purpose of the pre-recorded and live masterclasses of the Virtual Woodman Academy, is we teach you all that kind of thing. So yeah, if you didn't get enough out of today, if you still have questions, feel free to comment. Actually, I haven't checked the comments in a while. All right, so if you have any more questions, leave them below. We will definitely answer them in a later video. Yeah, oh my gosh, I love geeking out about vibrato. So thank you for watching. I hope you found this helpful. Again, leave a comment below if you have any other questions. Anna and I love you. Have a great evening and happy Tuesday. Bye.